on August 28th, 1990. A tornado of unprecedented power would strike near Plainfield, Illinois. She would achieve F5 status. She managed to kill multiple people and destroy entire neighborhoods. The thing about this tornado, probably more than anything else, is that despite the fact that it was 1990, and meteorological science had advanced quite a bit to the point that prediction was possible when it came to tornadoes, there was no warning given that this monster was going to appear. The situation on the 28th was unusual for many reasons. For one thing, it was pretty friggin' hot. It was late August, so you'd expect things to be cooling down a bit as the seasons approached fall, but it was still in the low 90 on the Fahrenheit scale, between 32 to 34 degrees Celsius. At the same time, the dew point was in the upper 70s, which was exceedingly high, though this didn't necessarily guarantee that a thunderstorm was going to be produced. However, that day, the atmosphere was thrown into a hissy fit and became highly volatile, very unstable, due to the approach of a low-pressure system from the northwest, which cooled the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Convective available potential energy values were driven into the excess of 8,000 joules per kilogram. And in case you have no idea what any of that means, for one thing, convective available potential energy, or CAPE, is a measure of the capacity of the atmosphere to support upward air movement that can lead to cloud formation. And 8,000 joules per kilogram? Well, for reference, 1,500 joules per kilogram is considered moderately unstable, and values above 4,000 are considered extreme. 8,000 is double what was considered extreme, so yeah, the atmosphere might as well have been on fire. It was so high that it could cause explosive thunderstorm development, very strong updrafts, as well as tornadoes. The conditions were obviously highly indicative of the potential for severe thunderstorms, bare minimum, and the National Severe Storms Forecast Center, or NSSFC, did issue a severe thunderstorm watch for northern Illinois that remained in effect between 1:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. Central Time. They also anticipated very high winds, and severe thunderstorms did, in fact, show up. One of them, though, developed supercellular characteristics south of Rockford, and mid-level steering winds had begun to change direction, resulting in a wind profile that was a lot more favorable for tornadic development. That supercell did produce multiple funnel sightings, as well as hail, to the south of Rockford before it headed southeast. This was already pretty weird. Normally, supercells don't travel southeast, they travel northeast. And when the tornado touched down, she would of course follow the same southeasterly path. More alarmingly though, she was rain-wrapped, so she couldn't be seen effectively, and the National Weather Service neglected to issue any kind of tornado warning until it was far, far too late for it to matter. Now, I should probably clarify at this point in the story that this tornado was so surprising and caught literally everybody off guard that there's not even any pictures or footage of her. Now, it being 1990, you'd think someone would have, but no one knew she was gonna be there. The only footage that's available isn't of her, but the supercell and the conditions it caused. It was taken, obviously, prior to the tornado touching down, but as you can see, it was already a pretty severe storm. The supercell had already dropped one tornado near Pecatonica, Illinois, 15 miles west of Rockford, but that particular tornado didn't last very long, and on the path the storm was following towards Plainfield, she did spawn 4 other short-lived tornadoes that did basically no damage. The worst of it was probably the Aurora Municipal Airport in Sugar Grove. A tornado did touch down there, lasting only 5 minutes, and managed to toss a few prop planes around and force the evacuation of the control tower, but there were no injuries. The real problem tornado appeared at 3:15 p.m. She touched down near Oswego in Kendall County, And again, there's no pictures of her. And even if there were, they'd probably look like this, because she spent basically the entire time rain-wrapped. Though she wasn't particularly strong at first, she rapidly increased in power to F2 and then F3 status, entering Will County. Her track would show her unusual southeasterly movement into Wetland Township near the Wetland Plains subdivision. At 3:25, she damaged basically all the homes in that subdivision, and several injuries were reported, including one child who had to be airlifted, later dying of their injuries. 12 homes were leveled. But remember, she was only an F3, she wasn't even at max strength. She gained more power as she ripped through open farmland, hitting F5, and that was indicated by the fact that her particular track was exceedingly obvious, because she scoured the heck out of the ground, ripping absolutely everything up, leaving nothing but bare soil. As she crossed over US Route 30, she threw a 20-ton tractor-trailer half a mile, which killed the driver. 3 other motorists were also killed in that area when their vehicles were lifted. She's actually believed to have been at her maximum power as she crossed that highway. As she approached Plainfield, she would actually lose power, but by lose power, I mean she was still high-end F4. Which is basically like saying that instead of the tornado being guaranteed to kill you, now there was a 95% chance of it killing you. That's not really helpful, okay? She was still gonna friggin' murder you. She slammed into Plainfield around 3:28 p.m. By 3:30, she directly hit the Plainfield High School, killing a science teacher and 2 of the maintenance workers. They were still students at the school at this time, some of which had been out practicing for the fall football games. They would run inside the high school to take shelter just minutes before the tornado showed up. The alarm would be sounded inside the school from the main office, and volleyball players who were also practicing inside the gymnasium rushed out of it to take shelter inside the same hallway where the football players were. According to witness reports, the second the last player got out of the gymnasium, a coach quickly shut it, which was interesting timing because the second he did, the door was immediately ripped back off the hinges. The gymnasium proceeded to completely collapse, which, given there was no one inside, was good timing, and the debris actually filled in the gap in the doorway, likely shielding the players from being sucked out themselves. That hallway must have been made of some really sturdy stuff, because by the time the tornado had passed, it was the only hallway left standing in the building. She would proceed to demolish the Plainfield School District Administration building, killing the wife of a custodian there. She then crossed Route 59, otherwise known as Division Street, and ripped apart the St. Mary Immaculate Church and School, killing 3, the principal, a music teacher, and the son of the cook at the rectory. As far as the rest of the city of Plainfield, she destroyed 55 homes, several of which were completely just gone. A grocery store was also badly damaged, and she even did damage to a cemetery, knocking over gravestones. In case you still needed a proper understanding of how strong she was, a metal dumpster was found wrapped around the top of a debarked tree. What? Oh, okay. And she wasn't finished yet. She continued on her southeasterly course, towards the large city of Joliet, damaging homes in the Crystal Lawns, Lily Cash, and Warwick subdivisions, killing 5 immediately, and 3 more would later succumb to injuries. She then tore into the Grand Prairie Elementary School, damaging it significantly. 69 homes were destroyed in Crystal Lawns alone. 75 were destroyed in the Peerless Estates. 55 were crushed in Lily Cash, and 50 were obliterated in Warwick. She continued onward towards Crest Hill. At 3:38 p.m., she shredded the Crest Hill Lakes apartment complex, though she was starting to lose strength considerably. She was at F3 at this point, which is still pretty dangerous, so, not really something to mess with, but not nearly as powerful as she was. Despite this, she still killed 8 people, destroying one of the apartment buildings and half of another. She then entered the Colony West subdivision and destroyed 12 town homes, and sadly, caught a married couple completely off guard. They would die in their car on Cedarwood Drive outside the apartment complex, not realizing the danger of the tornado until it was too late. She then crushed 3 more apartment buildings on Elizabeth Court, following it up with 3 more homes destroyed in Bridal Reef, and she also damaged homes on Arden Place, toppling 2 high-tension wire structures at Douglas Street and Palladium Drive West. Though she continued on for a bit more to the southeast, she eventually lifted completely off the ground near Woodlawn Avenue and Campbell Street in Joliet. Her supercell parent would, of course, continue on without her, crossing over the Indiana border, though it, too, would dissipate around 4:30 p.m. In the end, this tornado caused over $165 million worth of damage, killing a total of 29 people and injuring 353. One victim would die completely accidentally while they were guarding their home after the storm from potential looting, from carbon monoxide poisoning of all things. And she was the deadliest tornado event in the region since the 1967 Oak Lawn tornado. She also was unique. Outside of her southeasterly course, which is unusual, she was also the only F5 rated tornado ever officially recorded in August in the United States. Retroactively, the 1883 Rochester, Minnesota cyclone is also considered an F5, but that was 1883, well before the Fujita scale was even a thought. And cleanup and recovery would take some time. Though the death toll wasn't as high as it could have been, it still, for one thing, wasn't as low as it should have been. For two, she did do a lot of damage. The National Guard was called out to assist, and offers for further assistance came from as far away as the Soviet Union? What? Wait, it's 1990, aren't we enemies? And, well, questionable. By 1990, the diplomatic relations between the United States and the Soviets had become much better, comparatively. And interestingly, the Soviets felt that they owed a bit of a debt to the United States due to our own aid during the 1988 Armenian earthquake. The disaster was bad. I mean, really bad. It should be its own video. Somewhere between 25,000 and 50,000 people were killed. So, way worse than this tornado. And Mikhail Gorbachev was actually on a diplomatic visit to the US, meeting with Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush when the earthquake happened. When the scale of the disaster was realized, he left immediately, and the United States offered humanitarian assistance, which the Soviets decided to accept. As a result, the Soviets felt that it would be in good form to return the favor, and offered assistance for this tornado, via their embassy in Washington, D.C. I couldn't find any verification as to whether that assistance was accepted, as obviously this tornado was not nearly on the scale of that earthquake, but it was still considered a nice gesture. And regardless, cleanup still occurred, but there was significant criticism levied at the National Weather Service, because, hey, why didn't you tell us there was a tornado, guys? And, okay, it was their fault for not issuing it, but also it wasn't their fault, sort of, kind of. It was complicated. There was a lot of blame to be thrown around here, and for one thing, NEXRAD, Next Generation Radar, hadn't been completely rolled out, and this storm was just another reason why NEXRAD was pushed so hard, because it let meteorologists see far more indicative signs of ongoing tornadic activity and issue proper warnings. But at the time, they didn't have it, and for two, the National Weather Service offices in Chicago were entirely, completely 100% responsible for the whole state of Illinois, not just the immediate area. That meant that they were completely overwhelmed with their workload, especially when the whole state was seeing considerable storms, and they simply didn't see a tornado because of the workload issue. They did eventually issue a tornado warning for the area, but not until the tornado was already tearing through the middle of Plainfield. So, not really relevant at this point, guys. To be honest, most of the survivors should be credited with just having good situational awareness. Eyewitnesses reported that the atmosphere had turned green. some of you may already know, and take this odd phenomenon as a sign that there's a tornado. Now, that's not actually true. The atmosphere turning green thing doesn't necessarily mean a tornado is going to show up, though it should be taken as a sign that a tornado definitely can show up. It happens when there's water or ice particles in storm clouds with substantial depth. In that situation, they will start to scatter blue light. So when reddish light passes through them and is scattered as well, they will appear to glow green. It means there's a severe thunderstorm, almost guaranteed, and likely hail. And it can mean there's a tornado coming. It's not a guarantee, but people who saw this were like, hey, there might be a tornado. We should probably not be outside. And many lived because of this decision, so, you know. Another problem that the National Weather Service was dealing with was that even though the Chicago office did have a Doppler add-on that could have provided much better clarity regarding the situation, it had been disabled. Not on purpose, but by a lightning strike. So, okay, the National Weather Service did screw up, but a lot of it wasn't really their fault exactly. It had to do with the way things were being run, the lack of available tools, and a really inconvenient lightning strike. But due to the lack of warning, many meteorologists highlight what's known as the Plainfield syndrome, which is an idea that it's better to issue too many warnings and be wrong than to miss one very major critical warning that would get people killed. I'm sure there were many a meteorologist within the Chicago offices who felt a significant amount of guilt after the Plainfield tornado. They would have to live with the fact that if they had issued a warning, maybe less people would have died. 29 isn't as bad as it could be, but if they had a warning, it might have been less. Remember, it was so surprising that we don't even have any footage of her. No one even thought to do that, because she just appeared, did her damage, and left, which is interestingly also how I describe a few of my ex-girlfriends. The fallout after the storm did result in many positive changes, not just the swift introduction of NEXRAD, but also the National Weather Service opted to reduce the Chicago office's workload by creating new offices in and around Illinois, one in Romeoville in 1993 and one in Lincoln in 1995, giving the meteorologist more time to analyze each individual area's situation to better see, well, significant activity that needs to be reported and warned about. And today, there sits a memorial to the victims of this particular disaster, located in Plainfield, Illinois. Not only standing as a memorial to the victims, but it also is considered a thank you to those who sent aid for the recovery operation. Hundreds gather at a dedication ceremony every year, and the 30th anniversary memorial was held on August 28th, 2020, with church bells ringing at exactly 3:28 p.m. And with that, a special thank you goes out to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Jack Carson's Road Videos, Lord Off 444, I Surfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, Josh Johnson, Caleb Brainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Dolinsky, JBL Explorers, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Mark Holding, Mr. Terrevel, Hayden DeGrow, Kurt Forcum, Harry, Drew Dupree, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Hannah Bird, Duraushi, William Nemo, Dr. Race 78, Shimasu, Metal for Life Guy, Andrew Bowen, Crimson Rose, Ryan Wehofer, Zintac M, Boss K, Orange Glass, Andy, Ohio Trucker 1, Windy City Rails, John Videola, Extra Special J, Bob Condirk, Jared Brussel, Dara Williams, DE Ultra, Connor Hahn, Brian Philly, Nathaniel Brown, Liam Wright, Mr. Sleepy, and J1969, Rashad Austin, Westmost, DFL Church, Profound Punk, The Baxter, Jonathan Coco, Murder Drone Stall, Bad Train Puns Are Best, Raymond Zabo, AET Museum, Arthur Roy, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.